Well, I'm excited to introduce the next item on our agenda this morning, which is our annual feature of the NAE4-H Conference. It's our National Partner Update. We are thankful to have Dr. Scott Engel and Jennifer Sirangelo being with us today. Scott is Director of National Institute of Food and Agriculture within the United States Department of Agriculture. He's also the former Dean of the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences of University of Georgia and is a strong 4-H youth development supporter. So I think a Go Dogs would probably be in order. Where's our Georgia folks this morning? You're pretty quiet. And I think it's also the first time in the history of our association that we have had the director of NIFA or a high-level USDA official attend our conference. So very, very thankful for that, Scott. Jennifer serves as president and CEO of National 4-H Council, the private not-for-profit partner to the extension system. With that, I'd like to ask Scott to kick off the discussion, followed by Jennifer, and then there will be time for questions following the presentation. Scott and Jennifer, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. My story about the Greenbrier is that my brother is a chef up in Baltimore, has a restaurant there, but he trained at the Greenbrier for about 3 years. And on a fairly regular basis, usually 2 or 3 times a year, the students would be allowed to invite their family or friends to come sample some of the things that they had been testing out the previous week. So we got to go into the main dining room and for I think about $20 got an amazing meal. I doubt you can get a full meal in the main dining room for $20 anymore, but I have some really good memories of this place and I hope you're enjoying it as much as I did. Certainly am pleased to be here. As you have heard, I've been a strong supporter of 4-H. For many, many years, I did not grow up in 4-H. In fact, I never knew what it was until I got into the University of Maryland several decades ago, and my enthusiasm for the organization has been growing since then. I have a couple business items to discuss, but I do want to tell you something I used to tell the president of the University of Georgia, and a story that comes after that. I would tell him on a regular basis that the University of Georgia did amazing research and amazing outreach into the community at a variety of different levels, fantastic teaching, good public service. But I thought when you look at the impact on the state and how the University of Georgia made the state better, it was clearly 4-H that led the way in that. Research is important in teaching and how we deliver agricultural information, but when young people are trained, and this is basically a quote that comes from Bo Riles that many of you have known for a long time. When you work with a young person, obviously you're changing generations, and so I bought into that a long time ago, and I will continue to be a big supporter of 4-H. One of the ways that this manifested itself, and so where are my colleagues from Georgia in here? I can't see you. Okay, they're in back. Look forward to catching up with all of you. This was about a decade ago. Georgia was going through we'd just gone into the recession. There were some difficult financial times. President of the University of Georgia had to cut the budget. He wanted to make a statement. So I woke up one morning and there on the front page of the local newspaper was President proposes to eliminate most of 4-H in Georgia, including all the camps, but particularly the Rock Eagle 4-H camp, which is one of the flagships of the entire system. And I called him immediately because I had not heard of this, and I said, Mike, you can close our college if you want. You can close an academic department. You can fire faculty. You can fire staff, and there'll be pushback, but it'll be fought on somewhat of a academic level. But when you propose to close 4-H, that becomes a whole different argument at that point. And his response was to me, well, I'm president, I know what I'm doing. And I worked for him, and I said, yes, sir, you certainly do know what you're doing. But I will tell you that a couple years later, he was gone as president. And I don't know if there was any connection between the two, but there was a tremendous amount of pushback resulting in the Speaker of the House coming to a 4-H banquet. And some of you may remember this. Speaker David Ralston stood up and he pounded the podium. He said, as long as I am Speaker of the House and as long as I have a breath left in me, 4-H will never be harmed, which was certainly true while he was Speaker, and the budgets for 4-H began to grow at that time. So, maybe the president didn't know what he was doing at that point, and there really was a strategy to it, and the university survived. So there may have been some method to all of this madness, but the point of it was that 4-H is so important for each of our states that not just us, not just the students and young people that we work with, but many, many people in each state are going to go to bat for it. And again, I just want to finish up by saying I still think it's the most important thing that University of Georgia does. I was at the University of Maryland for a long time, University of Missouri. The same would hold true, and probably for all of your states as well. So a little bit of update on what's going on in NIFA. We are trying to reshape our partnership with the entire system. It's evolved over time, where NIFA, the National Institute for Food and Agriculture, became dominant in several areas. In other areas, we were relatively absent. And this was never meant to, the way it was meant to be. It was meant to be a true partnership where we were at the table, but we weren't the lead partner. We were an equal partner to the states and the extension programs, the extension leaders, program leaders, the National Council, the partners that the council works with, particularly through industry, and then the federal government. And so when I started, one of the things that Jennifer and I talked about was how could we reset this relationship to put everyone essentially on an equal footing for all areas of this relationship. And so she and I have been working hard on that. I think we've made some pretty good progress in how we coordinate the work that we do. I do serve on a board of hers and try to make every meeting so that I can, at least I know what's going on and will have input where it's needed. So one of the ways, I think this is almost a metaphor. A lot of you have been to the old waterfront building. I say old because it's now empty. But you've been there before. If you went up to the top floor, as you walked into the building, it said the National 4-H headquarters. Again, that was never meant to be the headquarters. That was meant to be the National 4-H federal partner. So we took down that sign. We put up another sign as the federal partner for 4-H, just as really a demonstration, again, as a metaphor for how we want to build this relationship. We are going through some tough times right now. I think all of you understand that we have moved ahead the entire, almost all of NIFA from the waterfront building in Washington, D.C. to Kansas City, and I want to get back to that in just a minute. But we have vacated our space at the waterfront building. There is nothing left there, but when you do come to Washington, D.C., we still have representatives for you to meet with. Carolyn, we have several national program liaisons. These are brand new positions that we have created so that when you come to D.C., you will have someone to talk to that has disciplinary expertise. Carolyn Krokel, who I think many of you have known, if you've been to D.C., you probably met with her. She will remain in Washington, D.C. Her new office, and I don't think she even knows this yet, will be in the South Building of the USDA directly off of Independence Avenue. So she'll be there, and she'll be there to meet with you when you're in town, but she'll also be a liaison to other federal agencies that are looking to partner with NIFA, and particularly for youth development. I was at a National Institute of Health meeting just a couple of weeks ago, and they were asking, and in fact they invited me there to learn more about 4-H, but they were asking how can we better serve, almost like our past speaker, how can we better interact, better serve, better reach rural communities? And I had the same message that our last speaker did, and that's work with 4-H, that the system already exists. There's no reason for the National Institute of Health to invent another youth development program because we have an amazing system already. So we have moved, have context for you there, but let me talk a little bit about the move. It happened about a month ago. We have 66 employees in Washington, or in Kansas City right now. We have 19 left in Washington, D.C. We will we'll continue to grow the numbers in Kansas City. We're on a hiring blitz right now. We're hiring about anywhere from 5 to 10 people a week. We are having a career fair in Kansas City tomorrow. As a matter of fact, I'll be leaving for Kansas City later on today. But we are doing everything we can to staff up quickly. We have lost almost everyone who serves 4-H in either Kansas City or Washington, D.C. So right now, Carolyn remains in Washington, but in Kansas City, there is no one for you to meet with at this point. We need to change that quickly. We have advertised for a national program leader that would have exclusive domain over 4-H. In the past, we've had individuals that have split their time between various programs. We've decided this time around that we want to hire someone that has only 4-H work that they will be managing. We need to get them hired quickly, and then they need to hire a staff under them so that we can begin to rebuild this relationship. I have not seen the list of candidates yet, so I don't know whether or not we've had a lot of applicants from the 4-H community. I hope we have, and I hope we find a good person there. But if not, we will certainly re-advertise, and we will continue the process. So I was hoping I'd have some news for you, and at least we would know if we were going to continue the search or if we were on a glide path to hire someone at this point. But I don't know today, and so hopefully within the next couple of weeks we will have that information for you. But you will have a 4-H advocate in Kansas City, and so again, you need to be urging your colleagues to apply for these positions, to step up. It's a competitive process. I can't really tell you what's going to happen, but we need good applicants from your community to be part of our system. We have good salaries. Kansas City, as it turns out, is a wonderful city. Those who have lived in Washington, D.C. for a long time may have even grown up there. The idea of moving to Kansas City was unfathomable to them. There is no life outside of the Beltway in their mind. A lot of them didn't choose to make the move to Kansas City, but those that have done that have almost uniformly said it's an amazing city. It's warm, it's welcoming, it's got the diversity that they were hoping for. The cost of living obviously is much, much better. The commutes are much, much better than you would see in D.C. And so we have a bunch of happy employees in Washington right now. But we did lose 75% of all of our staff. 75% chose to leave the employment of NIFA, and they almost all went to other agencies. They were well qualified. They found jobs very quickly to stay in D.C. if that's what they wanted. So that does two things for NIFA. Number one, that's a huge problem for us just getting the job done when you've only got 80 people. So to give you some perspective here, 3 years ago we had 350 employees in NIFA. Now we have 80. And our budget 3 years ago was $1.3 billion. Now it'll probably be $1.7 billion this year. So more money and a lot fewer people to do that. So I'm going to talk in just a minute about how we are getting through this, but the main thing is we're hiring. So if you know of anyone, maybe not for that national program leader's position, but whether it's a business person, could be a communicator, it could be a scientist in another area, please send them our way. And the way you can do that is tell them to go to the NIFA website. You click on careers. That will take you to USA Jobs, and that will list all of the positions. And you'll only see 7 or 8 positions, sometimes only 2 or 3 positions, but under each one of those, there may be 10 or 20 listings. So just because you see it and only see 3 listings, don't think that we're not doing much hiring right now. There's a lot of it going on. As I said, we're hiring between 5 and 10 people a week right now. If we hire more than that, frankly, we can't get them onboarded very well and get them trained up. And if we go slower than that, then we'll never fill out our workforce, and we'll be in hiring mode probably in perpetuity. So we feel like we're in a pretty good stride right now for that. I always get a lot of questions. Okay, you've got 80 people. What are you going to do to get the job done? Almost all of you in here receive some funding from the federal government, primarily through NIFA. Now, there are other programs that are not through the USDA as well, but most of the money comes through that route. We have to get the money to you in a timely way. And just to give you some of the perspective of this, some of the money is, they call it 1 year. This is all new to me. I was never in the federal government before. There's 1 year money that if we don't get it to you by the end of that fiscal year, it goes back to the Treasury and it's gone forever. There's 2-year money that if you don't get it to you by 2 years, it goes back to the Treasury, and then there's no-year money. And the funds that support 4-H have some of each one of those. So what we have prioritized is getting the 1-year money out the door, which we have already done, making sure that we have the 2-year money done by March of next year, and then we're going to get to the no-year money after that. And we have also prioritized the institutions that we are going to work with, because there are some small institutions, I'll call out the tribal colleges here, that don't have a lot of support other than the federal government. So when our funding dries up because we can't get the money to the tribal schools in time, they have to lay off people. And as you know, that's a big problem because those individuals are probably gone forever. So we are prioritizing the tribal colleges, the 1890 schools, and some NGOs and small businesses that just don't have the flexibility like some of the big states might. The second tier will be the Hispanic serving institutions and mid-sized schools. And the third priority will be the 1862s, the more traditional land-grant schools, the University of Georgia's of the world, because they have more flexibility. So we have socialized this information well with all the schools. We have shared this with the business managers of each one of these. And what we have said is if there is a problem, even if you're in the University of West Virginia, one of the big schools, and you would be in that third tier, but if you find that there's a particular program that if the money is two, maybe 3 months late, that's going to be a big problem, we will move you up to the top of the list and get that taken care of. So during this time, we need to have a lot of communication, be extremely transparent with each other. So we have to get through this. It is a problem. It's not business as usual when you only have 80 people doing the work of 350, but we think we have a plan and we have prioritized things properly, and we're hiring fast enough that we will get through this. And a year from now, we're going to have plenty of people on board, so this won't be a problem. But we're looking at a pretty difficult 6 months. So if any of you have a program that you see that is in jeopardy because NIFA has not gotten you your money in time, let one of us know. Call me, call Carolyn, call one of the business officers at NIFA, and make sure they know it. The one thing we don't want you to do is complain without letting us know what the problem is. We don't even have enough people on board right now to know what we don't know all the time. So we're getting through this, and we will make progress, and we will keep you in the loop. We are going to start looking at, we're calling this Reimagine NIFA, and it's not our official title yet, but I know when I was in the land grant system, and probably a lot of you have had complaints about how things at NIFA are done, whether it's the reporting that you do. I'll just give you an example. Some states, for certain types of funds, will submit a 7-page report. That seems to be adequate. Other states submit a 700-page report for the same thing. I don't know what the right number is. It's probably somewhere in between 7 and 700. But the problem is no one knows. And no one knows what we do with 700 pages. I've been told that a lot of these reports we don't read. So we're going to go through all of our business practices, and we are going to ask you. And this is going to start at APLU on Saturday of this coming week. But we're going to ask you to essentially conduct a SWOT analysis. We'd like this to be done through groups, you can certainly send things in individually. We'll post this in the Federal Register. But what's working, what's not, what are the threats, and what are your suggestions for doing things differently? Do you think you send in things that we don't read? Are we too slow at getting money out the door, even in a good year? Do we have programs that are overly burdensome and don't have the impact that you would see in your world? Those are the types of things we want to hear. I don't want to plant ideas. I shouldn't have said any of that. I don't want to plant ideas in your head about what you'll recommend to us. But we do want to hear from you, and we will be talking to the entire system, whether it's extension, experiment stations, the academic programs. I'll be talking to the deans on Sunday. I spoke to the tribal colleges at their Falcon meeting last week. And we'll go on and on like that. We want all of this data in by January 31st, and then we'll turn inward and start thinking about how we can utilize this information to make NIFA better. So it's literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change a federal institution. It is, up until 4 years ago, I spent the last 3 years before that pretty much living in Africa, running a large NGO that worked on soil fertility, and a year in Washington, D.C. But before that, I had been in the land grant system since 1971, so I really didn't know much else besides land grant schools. And as hard as you think land grant schools are to change, they are the Titanic, they're hard to change course when you see that iceberg ahead, but they make the federal government look like a speedboat sometimes. I am just amazed how slow the federal government is and how loath sometimes they are to change. So we have this opportunity right now. I don't want to call it a crisis because we are getting through it, but you've all heard the Rahm Emanuel quote of never let a good crisis go to waste. And so we are going to take this opportunity to make sure that NIFA, in the words of the Secretary, Sonny Perdue, the Secretary of Agriculture, to make sure it's the best run, most efficient agency in the entire federal government. And we got the opportunity, we got the political will right now to make that happen. And we'd ask that all of you bear with us during this time of transition, but be a part of the process as we go through the rebuilding of the organization. Just a couple other short things to mention to you. There is a large, I think it's a large youth meeting coming up this spring. Typically, NIFA has been a major part of the leadership and planning for that effort. We can't do it for you this year. We don't have the people. And so what we are doing right now, and Jennifer, I checked on the way up here, the contract is still in the mail, but we will work with the National Council to contract with them to do a lot of the things. We'll provide the funding. The council will provide the effort to do a lot of the things that NIFA had done before. And then next year, we'll just see what happens. Maybe this is a good system, maybe it's not. We'll see who we have on board at that time, and are we capable of handling the effort. Or maybe we'll decide that this new model is perfect and exactly what we want to continue. But the extension directors and the council and NIFA will all sit down at some point in time and make these decisions about how we continue to interact in the future for some of these types of programs. So with that, my time is just about up. I want to truly thank all of you for your work, your support. So I know we probably have a few volunteers in here, but all that you do to support the youth of this country. I will end with what I began with. I think this is the best thing that happens at almost all of your universities to make your states better. And so keep doing what you're doing. It's an amazing program. NIFA will continue to be your strong partner and strong and appropriate partner. Look forward to working with the council, with the extension leadership, the program leaders, and just know that I'm here to help you anytime I can. So thank you for your time. We're going to take questions after Jennifer speaks. Get back to you then. So thank you.
Scott, I just want to, I'm sure you'll hear this from the room too, but I just want to thank you so much for making the drive here today. I know you were scheduled to be in Kansas City with your growing staff, but your commitment to 4-H is really obvious. And what I really appreciate about Scott Engel, I hadn't met him until I'd heard about his appointment, and then about a month later, I think we heard about the move of NIFA, and I had a chance to meet Scott, and it's been one of my great pleasures to meet and work with a leader at USDA who is not just showing his affection and commitment to 4-H in words, but in his actions. And you see that today with him being here and Scott serving on our board. So it's my pleasure to update you from the other national partner. I'm thankful to Scott to be here so we can both answer questions together. As he said, my name's Jennifer, by the way. Sorry, I'm Jennifer Sirangelo, and I'm the president and CEO of the National 4-H Council. And while I don't have a Georgia 4-H contingent to call out, I do want you to know my mother, Jeannie Buffa, is with me, and so Mom is here. I know many of you have met my mom over the years. She's very excited for her first trip to West Virginia. So Mom, thanks for coming and being my first youth development professional in my life. My mom is a former teacher and wishes she had been a 4-H educator. But anyway, I wanted to, as I said, I wanted to also just thank Scott for serving on the National 4-H Council Board. In another first for USDA, I think NIFA was just started about 12 years ago, isn't it? I think 10 years ago. And in that 10 years, we've never had a director of the National Institute of Food and Agriculture serve on National 4-H Council's board as the liaison from USDA. So I'm really grateful to Scott for that and for his engagement. So I will just do a quick update. Oh, one other quick thing is, when Scott was mentioning the event, you know, we have a number of events, national events in 4-H, and Scott was talking about the National 4-H Conference that happens in the spring. So the announcement has been out. I think it's the last week of March. It's that last week of March, the first week of April. And so you've got that. As soon as we get the contract finished, we're very pleased at Council to partner with USDA to make their conference happen. And you'll be hearing more. So I'm grateful, Scott, that your team reached out. This is exactly, Scott and I have been talking for a few months about how in this transition, how can we all work together to get through this, you know, just this time of such a huge transition, and Council and our board stand ready as needed to support and partner with USDA. So what Scott and I are demonstrating here a little bit is, I think I've got some slides, good, is is sharing the vision we have for, together with the Extension Committee on Policy, that's called ECOP, and the 4-H committee there, to really grow 4-H and a commitment to invest in 4-H. And I represent National 4-H Council and our board and our staff, Scott representing the federal government. And you'll see a little later today, those of you that may go to the National and Staff Lunch, you'll see the leadership of Cooperative Extension and Extension directors also supporting our aspirational goal to reach 25 million young people in the United States in the next, by 2025. And what we're seeing, I hope you see demonstrated here today and in the actions you see going on around all the announcements and communication with you, is an alignment that I see in my 14 years with Cooperative Extension. I've been at Council for about 9 or 10 years as our Chief Development Officer and as CEO for 5. I've never seen an alignment like this of our federal partner, the national nonprofit partner, and Cooperative Extension. And we have a number of systems to keep that happening, the anchor of which is really the ECOP 4-H committee. And USDA NIFA serves on that. I serve as the representative, and from Council, Caroline Krokel will be serving until the new leader from USDA NIFA arrives. And we have 10 members of Cooperative Extension, 5 extension directors, and 5 state program leaders. And that's been really the anchor keeping us aligned and moving together. But one of the things we did, Scott and I and the head of Extension, ECOP 4-H, in the spring was renew the national MOU that solidifies our partnership and brings us together. And one of the things that I do as the leader of Council is ensure that we are fulfilling at National 4-H Council our unique role in that agreement. And so we've stayed focused in my 5 years as CEO on 3 things. And this is kind of the new iteration, what I have on the slide here, that relates to our strategic plan that our board approved in December. But the things we invest in and the things that we do for the system have not changed, just some of the, we update every 3 years kind of what that looks like. But they involved convening the 4-H movement around important activities like we've done over the years, important initiatives. We've done that through the years in after school, in STEM, in healthy living. You know about our summits. We have CWF. We're now going to be supporting conference a little bit more, Congress. We also invest in, and certainly this meeting among others. You'll see growing the interest of our investors in the marketplace. Corporations and foundations we work with are really interested moving forward in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you'll see us convening more around that. You've probably already seen some of what we've done. The other things we do are 2 that you know really well. One is telling the 4-H story. So we try to be best in the world at equipping you to tell the story of 4-H in a modern, relevant way that will increase investment from your universities, from your state and local governments, and from your alumni and other partners in your community. So we try to model that at the national level and give you the tools to do that as well. And then we also invest in and lead the public-private partnerships, especially with industry, as Scott mentioned, that want to work with 4-H beyond one state. So that's what we do. You see our partnerships, and you engage in them all along the way. So I'm going to start just with a really quick update on those. These are some of the brands and the companies and the partners that you work with every day as we send over 800 grants that total over $20 million a year out to you to do new and innovative work. I want to thank, as I look around the room, I wanted to share that Scott, unfortunately, I'm not in the position of you of having to fill all my roles, and we have, I think, close to 30 members of the National 4-H Council staff who are here today and who make these investments in you possible. I'd just like to ask those National 4-H Council staff to stand really quick. If you have any questions about what I'm talking about, could you guys stand up? They represent our grants, our marketing, our fundraising, our field relations, and I just want to thank them for what they do every day. At National 4-H Council, we know that we were created, National 4-H Council, in case you don't know the story, we were created by extension to do the things that state 4-H programs couldn't do on their own, but they needed to come together and do together, whether it was having a National 4-H mall where you can buy this pin if you're interested, or run the National 4-H Conference Center, which we're proud to celebrate 60 years at that 4-H Conference Center this fall, or doing things like partnering with corporations that used to be things like Mr. Penny and Mr. Woolworth, Mr. Firestone and Mr. Bridgestone showing up at our meetings. And today we have Mylan, we have Microsoft and other companies here and supporting our conference. So we have a long tradition of doing that. But that's why National 4-H Council was created, was to be able to create partnerships like this that span state lines and span regions and are really bigger than any of us alone. And it's our privilege to be able to build these relationships. What's been exciting is as we have together, under really the leadership and direction of the ECOP 4-H committee, focused at National 4-H Council more and more on supporting you as you engage your alumni. It's been fun to see how we really didn't do that much at the national level, but in the last 5 years we've really focused more on that. And I wanted to show you of all those companies and foundations that we work with, these ones that are highlighted have really been generated and powered by your alumni who are in those companies and are so excited about bringing 4-H to more kids and to their communities. So I just thought I'd share with you how much of this is really powered by our alumni. And I also just wanted to thank a couple of our partners at the national level who've invested in this meeting. One is Microsoft. They have provided a generous sponsorship for this conference because they know and understand the importance you play in all of our communities, especially rural communities. And we're really pleased that Mary Snap, who is the former head of Microsoft Philanthropies and today works for the president of Microsoft, serves on our board. She's from Newton, Kansas, and is very passionate about investing in what you do. We're also really pleased that many of you are engaged in, I think it's now nearly almost 100 communities where we have Microsoft grants in communities for our Tech Changemakers program with Microsoft, where young people are making a difference through technology, really of their own, a lot of their own ingenuity and their own ideas making that happen. Finally, with Microsoft, if you will watch or kind of see our social media this spring, look out for the president of Microsoft, Brad Smith, who is from, I think it's Fargo, right, Heather? North Dakota, where he grew up, I think. Right? Wisconsin. He's from, oh, that's right, he's from Wisconsin. Sorry, there's another one from North Dakota. But anyway, he will be at our National 4-H Legacy Awards in the spring accepting our Corporate Champion Awards. So we're really proud and excited about that. The other donor I just wanted to highlight and thank you guys for your years of engagement with is Tractor Supply. We just finished our fall promotion. thanks to Catherine O'Hare and all of our team that's been working with them, and all of you, that promotion generated this year $967,000 for this promotion, which is awesome. You guys know that goes back and checks to you for your communities. Our 10-year total, we're celebrating 10 years with Tractor Supply, and that 10-year total is $14 million. So I just want to thank you guys so much. I know so many of you grab me in the hall and you're like, thank you so much for Tractor Supply. But we need to thank you because they stay with this relationship in this program because, first of all, their employees won't let it go. They love working with you, and you all do just such a great job of engaging and working with them and bringing your young people to the stores and really making it a true partnership. So look out for 2020 dates for the next promotion, the spring promotion. Those aren't set quite yet, but they'll be, just know that it's continuing and you'll see more coming from there. Also, just wanted to take a quick minute to celebrate you and congratulations to you on an amazing National 4-H Week, which we just concluded, as you guys know, a couple weeks ago. It was just so fun to see all the creativity you brought to how you were celebrating 4-H Week and telling the story of 4-H in really new and relevant ways. Also, just wanted to thank you for your engagement on Game Changers and our National 4-H Science Day. The exciting thing for us, we get to kind of see the big picture of what happens, and we had over a 56% increase this year in the number of kits that went out and activities that happened. It was huge. So I just want to thank you guys, and I hope that you found it really engaging for your young people. And before we leave this topic, I just want to thank and give a huge shout out to West Virginia Extension Service for their partnership in creating this this challenge this year, because it was really, they were an important part of making it happen. So congratulations to you on a great 4-H week and an awesome National Youth Science Day. I just want to thank you for that. So as we move to telling the 4-H story and a little bit about where we are working with all of you on this important part of our work together, we're really excited to share. I hope you've started to see the billboards and the bus shelter signs and other things in your state. But we're very excited to announce a new partnership with the Outdoor Advertising Association of America, which provides for us pro bono space to advertise and to share our story and our national marketing ideas around Inspire Kids to Do and our campaign. It's really exciting. We were selected, 4-H was selected as a charity partner this year, so we will benefit from a number of donated billboards, airport signs, bus shelters, any kind of advertising that you see out of your home is the kinds of things you'll begin to see. So the total value of what's been donated so far in just a few weeks is over $5 million by the Outdoor Advertising Association, which is amazing. I don't know if we've ever, some of you that have been around longer than me are going to have to tell me if we've ever had an outdoor advertising campaign this big, and we're just beginning. But it's very exciting. We're in 40 states, in over 85 markets. We have put the priority on the states that are a part of 4-H Grows, so I think some of you know about that program and whether you're a state that's investing in that and being a part of that marketing program. But what's exciting for us too is, as we know, we have a lot of our alumni, 2/3 of our alumni that grew up in rural areas. Today, 2/3 of them live in urban areas. And what's really exciting is that this campaign, already these outdoor advertising signs and billboards are reaching 11 of the top 20 markets in the United States by size. So that means they're getting into urban areas, and it's very exciting. So we'll see kind of what happens and more to come. But please, when you see the signs, we're starting to see them up. You'll see here some of the ones that we've seen on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter. So please, if you see them, take pictures. We'll start retweeting and we'll tell the story together and kind of even continue to share more about that. So the last thing I wanted to share about was council's role in convening. And I mentioned a few minutes ago that one of the areas that our partners are really asking us to partner with you on even more is in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm just really thankful that our role that we can play is to bring resources to the ECOP 4-H committee's vision for this. So we have brought back, after a very short retirement, part-time Dr. Dorothy Freeman, who's a former president of NAE4-H, the former state program leader in Minnesota. So we didn't let her retire, I think maybe a day or a week, and we brought her back part-time to work with council with these donors that we have that are so interested in supporting the work you are doing and the work that the program leader working group is leading around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I wanted to share that with you. So we have funded Dorothy and we're supporting ECOP4H around creating a larger equity task force that can begin to kind of put an umbrella around all the work we're doing and give us a framework, kind of like we did with after school and like we've done with STEM and other areas, to give us some guidance just as a full movement together. And then there's a lot of activities happening under that umbrella, but I'm really thankful to Dorothy and to the State 4-H program leaders and others who are working with us so that we can really give our donors a picture of where we're going so that they can continue to invest. So part of that is we are also supporting at National 4-H Council the Program Leader Working Group has a committee, a permanent committee called the Access, Equity, and Belonging Committee. And you may remember this committee. It was started about a couple years ago. And I'm really thankful. I saw Dr. Nia Imani Fields, the newly announced State 4-H program leader in Maryland. So pleased that she's here. And she's leading that committee, co-leading that with Faye Moncloa. And I don't know if Faye is here. I haven't seen her, so she's not here. But they have been doing an amazing job of keeping that committee working. And what I wanted you to see is the committees, the groups under this committee that are working on creating and developing resources that support your work with these especially vulnerable groups. And this is what National 4-H Council is supporting through helping them convene. I'm very pleased that E-Extension is housing the materials. So if you go on, you can find if you're working with any of these communities, you want to work with them, your county is asking you to support young people in new ways, these resources are available to you, and I'm so grateful. They're all your colleagues. They are county educators, they are state specialists, and they are really working hard. So that's why our donors really want to support them, National 4-H Council and our board as well. So we are investing in this and we'll continue to, and thanks to Dorothy and that committee, we'll have even a great roadmap for the future as we continue to serve more kids and to make sure that all kids feel welcome in 4-H. So with that, I'm going to end. You may remember or have heard that at National 4-H Council, one of the things we did last year was a True Leaders in Equity Institute. And it was a first-time thing for us, kind of learning how we can support you. And we had a number of states, I think it was about 14 or 17, that sent youth and adult teams. And we asked them before they came to really define equity for themselves and determine what does that look like in their community, what's important to you, especially from the young person's perspective. And they came, they got more skills, they got training, they got to meet like-minded individuals, they went home with a plan for how they would implement that. And the diversity of definitions of equity and what it looked like in their communities was one of the things that I was most impressed with the young people. So as a part of that, we captured a video where we asked them to talk about equity in their own voice. So this video, you're gonna see young people. These are the actual kids who came to the conference and the 4-H educators and volunteers who came with them. And I just thought the best way to end my update for you from National 4-H Council is in their voice, because that's what we try to do every day at Council, is to elevate the voice of young people, your voice, and ensure that you can do everything you can to serve all kids in your communities. So this will be my ending, and then we'll take questions in a few minutes.
For me, equity is to be open-minded.
Equity means hope. Equity means power.
Equity means to me dynamic, because requires sensibility, require action, and require respect.
To me, equity is support. Equity is love. It's loving each other for who we are.
Equity to me is justice.
Equity means together.
Equity means potential.
For me, equity means opportunity. We should all have the same opportunity with respect to our abilities as humans.
What equity means to me is
destigmatizing, because the first step is taking the stigma away from whatever it is that they need help with.
What equity means to me is equal opportunity. It means that everybody gets a chance to be themselves and to live the life that will make them the happiest.
Equity means respect. It means treating people how they want to be treated and making sure that everyone has a place.
In a word, equity to me means being welcoming. It means making sure everyone feels welcome in 4-H.
We have about 10 minutes for question and answer. There are 2 microphones in the center of the room on either side. So if you have questions, please approach the microphone, state your name as well as the state or university that you're affiliated with, and then we'll have Dr. Engel and Ms. Sirangelo answer your question. Are there any questions at this time? This is unbelievable that this group has
There's
no
one.
questions.
I see one. Great.
All right.
All right.
Our first question, sir.
I volunteer as tribute. My name is Alan Taggart. I'm with University of Idaho, located in Boise, and I love the support that y'all support us with, like that you have the marketing available for us and continue to tell the 4-H story and continue to shoot for that 10 million. And so my question in regards to that 10 million kids by 2025, what the plan is, for continued financial support to have more staff to make that happen. That's definitely a number one. We live in an urban area, here in Boise. They're out in Boise, and we are very interested in seeing what we can continue to do to get more hands on deck to make that happen. So just wondering what can be done on that front.
Sure. Do you want me to start with that, Scott? Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for the question. And this has been the thing we've talked about for a long time, at least since I've been at the table at the Extension Committee on 4-H, on policy on 4-H. So what I'll share with you is that from where I sit, let's start with, I think what I'm seeing and hearing is first, extension directors making choices about what they invest in 4-H. That's the first step that we've been talking about, because just to kind of put it in perspective, extension is about a $3 billion enterprise. USDA is about a 10%. If you kind of add up the numbers, USDA invests about 10% of the overall investment in extension, which is $300 million that Scott and his team roughly put into Smith-Lever. And most extension directors will tell you that's about 10%. So if you kind of add it up, about 40% comes from your government, your state government, about 40%. It's different in every county, but generally about 40% from your counties, and another 10% comes from what you earn. So there's a lot of money in extension and 4-H. There's about $1 billion roughly that extension directors kind of indicate that is for 4-H. So one of the things that our board and extension directors are talking about a lot is how we can work with university presidents to help them increase the investments from the resources that currently exist to ensure that 4-H gets the appropriate share of that for what 4-H does, like Dr. Engel mentioned, for the university and in communities. So we first start with what we have and see if we can increase more of that where we need to grow and supporting. So that's the first strategy that I'm hearing extension directors talk about. The second is we are starting to talk about the Farm Bill that's coming up. For instance, I've been asked to come out, Dr. Engel and I will both be out at APLU this weekend with the Land Grant University leadership and thinking about the Farm Bill and where does 4-H fit into that. It's early stage, but I think we have to start the conversation. So I think each of you can continue to help by being very, if you think about what role you can play in helping that, I would say number one is knowing the demographics of where you are, understanding how you're serving the demographics of the kids in your community, and making sure you have a quick picture for your director of extension to be able to take to the Dean of Ag and the President, when needed, of how 4-H is impacting your community. Each of you can play a role in helping us advocate for more investment, but you have to play a role. I don't know what you're doing, and neither does your president, unless you tell them. So that's the role you can play.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next question.
This is really very much a follow-up to that question. It was similar to what I was thinking of asking. I'm Laura Perry Johnson.
Oh, that's Laura Perry. I thought that was you. I can't see you from here.
Laura Perry Johnson from the University of Georgia, but I wanted to ask Scott about his thoughts on that line. There's no real line item federal funding for 4-H. In many of our states, we do use our Smith-Lever dollars and they flow, but there is really no requirements. So sometimes you hear people say there's no real federal funding for 4-H. What are your thoughts on that? Are we good like we are because most of the time it does flow, or should it be more legislated?
Well, Laura, if I answer that question for you, I'll be fired.
What can I say?
So I can give you some advice around the edges of that. I'll talk about every other group, commodities, special interest groups that have a need for additional federal funding. Again, I'm constrained by the Hatch Act, so I can't comment on that directly. But if another group, the soybean growers, for instance, needed support, they would work directly with their political leaders in their state, particularly those states that have significant influence. Often there are lobbyists hired to help move that forward. Clearly, this is something that I don't think 4-H has ever done. Mm-hmm. And I can't suggest that you would do that type of thing, but that's what everyone else is doing. So it is, I'm trying to dance around this one a little bit.
Well, and to kind of, I can add on to that just so that you know what the letters were I was saying. So APLU is the Association of Public and Land Grant Universities, and they have an army of government relations staff who advocate for your universities in Washington. And that's where the conversation is right now. So we're, I guess, in process there, Laura, right? But you can be very helpful. Laura can't.
All right, we have one additional question. This will be our final question.
Good morning. My name is Rakia Drawhood, and I serve as a state program leader in Texas at Prairie View A&M University. Good morning to both of you. I wanted to ask a question of Dr. Angle. I know that there's a lot of changes going on in terms of the USDA, and I just wanted your feedback. What is the difference in terms of the roles and responsibilities for the National Science Liaison for the Division of Youth in 4-H versus a National Program Leader? And how do you foresee the interaction between the state leaders and those two positions? How does that change who we interact with and what we interact with them about?
Well, your primary contact will be the as unyet selected national program leader for 4-H, who will be based in Kansas City. So I assume at your next meeting we will have that person on board, and they will be certainly one of the people that need to be at this meeting, and you need to interact with in a very significant way. There will, hopefully by that time, they have also had the opportunity to hire some staff under them that would be both engaged in helping to plan this meeting, if that's the direction we try to go in, and certainly be here to interact. So they'll be your main contact. But then we will have Carolyn Krokel, who you have heard has taken this lead role as a liaison. She'll be here later on today. And so you'll all have an opportunity to meet with her, but she is in essence exactly that. She's a liaison, so she is to meet with people to receive information and then take that information and get to the people who need it. Now, we've only got 6 program liaisons, so we're trying to cover every commodity and every function and every program area with 6 people. So Carolyn she will have youth under her purview, but she also has a number of other things, higher education and some of the social sciences as well. So she's not exclusively dedicated to youth programming, but she will be your contact in Washington, D.C. So if you're in D.C., you want to get a message to someone in NIFA, you can meet with Carolyn and she'll get that information to the right individual, and she will also be able to give you advice about who else to meet with. Please come visit us in Kansas City as well. Don't just come to Washington, D.C. We will have lots of opportunities to host meetings in Kansas City, so we hope to see some of you there in the future. We will also conduct some training. We're talking about some training meetings in Kansas City to help bring our partners there so that they can get to know us a little better around some things that I think would impact a lot of what goes on in 4-H. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you for the questions. So Jennifer and Scott, do you have any closing comments?
I don't have anything to add.
Thanks for the opportunity. I look forward to joining you next year too.
Yeah,
great, and
thank you.
We are certainly blessed, Scott, to be able to have you here as director of NIFA. And again, this is the first time in the history of our association to be able to have that happen. And so we're excited. And Jennifer and Scott, please know that as the professional development arm of the national system, our association is here to help continue to move our 4-H program forward and to grow our program to where it needs to be in 2025. So thank you very much. And with that, we look forward to seeing you all back here at 10:45 for the next part. Thank you.